Hello, Seattle Recruiting Battalion. My name is Master Sergeant Bryant. I'm the Senior Master Trainer. Today we'll be doing another session of our Trailblazer School of Excellence. Today we will be discussing USAREC Manual 3-31, which is Recruiting Center Operations. Okay. We'll start off with basically what I did was I went through the regulation to find some of the key points. So basically what I'm going to do is just give a very brief overview of the regulation or the manual to give you guys a quick understanding of what's in it. Starting off with the preface of the manual. Basically, Recruiting Center Operations is a how-to think manual for recruiting center leadership. The manual provides leaders with a common recruiting philosophy and language and presents guidance and techniques to execute recruiting operations at the center level. So basically, it's not a regulation, it's a USAREC manual, so it's just some guidelines and some TTPs that you can use for recruiting operations. The purpose is describe and establish a foundation for center leaders to execute the art and science of recruiting operations. Okay, looking at the table of contents, we have Chapter 1, which is the overview of recruiting operations. Chapter 2 is leveraging the recruiting environment. Chapter 3, decisive operations. Chapter 4, shaping operations. Chapter 5, sustaining operations. And there's an Appendix A, which is the IPR format. Okay, good information there. Moving into Chapter 1. All right, Chapter 1 is the overview of recruiting operations. So it starts off with leadership. Basically, sound leadership is at the center level and is essential for the effective operations, leader development, and successful mission accomplishment. The center leader sets the tone for the recruiters and enforces the Army values on a daily basis. The leadership is also responsible for recognizing exceptional performance and correcting substandard performance. And leadership in the recruiting center underpins each of the 8 recruiting functions. So leadership is very key. It takes a strong leader to be a center leader. And it's essential for the recruiting process. Leaders have to be involved at all time through all the functions of the process. So center leaders, keep that in mind. Okay, next thing we talk about is mission command. All right, there are 6 principles of mission command. These 6 principles guide the center leader throughout their time out there in the centers. Okay, these 6 principles are building cohesive teams, creating shared understanding, providing a clear commander's intent, exercising disciplined initiative, using mission orders, and accepting prudent risk. Okay, so with those, by using those 6 principles, subordinate leaders can execute authority and get the job done. Okay, so we're entrusting the center leaders to actually put their spin, they apply their leadership, and complete the recruiting operations. Okay, the next thing that's talked about in the manual is command communication. Effective communication is essential to establishment and maintaining trust in a mission command environment. So center leaders must understand and communicate the commander's intent to the recruiting force to support discipline, initiative, and prudent risk-taking. So center leaders have to understand what the intent is and then also be able to communicate that down to the recruiter level. Okay, and the center leader, once they understand and they start communicating, they leverage the recruiting operations plan, weekly planning meetings, IPRs and AARs to communicate with the recruiting force, and then they assess the effectiveness of the ROPS, and gain valuable insight to inform operations at the center and company and battalion levels. Okay, moving on. In order to successfully recruit and achieve their assigned mission, a couple of things that we're looking at for the center commanders or center leaders to be able to do. One is receive the mission from the company commander. Next, they apply the recruiting operations process to it, and then execute troop leading procedures. Also, the center leaders are going to use the recruiting operations process to execute recruiting along 3 lines of effort: prospecting, processing, and leading future soldiers. So by synchronizing these 3 lines of effort with the recruiting operations plan, the center leader will enable the force to identify, compete for, engender a commitment, and assess qualified individuals for enlistment or reclassification training. What we have here is basically a diagram here depicting troop leading procedures, the military decision-making process, and how that relates to the recruiting environment visualization. Okay, the recruiting operations process occurs at all echelons of command, and the center leader plays a key role in providing bottom-up refinement to inform company and battalion level operations. The center leader will receive the mission from the company commander, apply the recruiting process, execute troop leading procedures. So that's all just depicted here. Gives you a quick visual representation and kind of gets you on the right track. Okay, next we're going to discuss getting into the recruiting process. Okay, 3 things that's very important for the center leaders to be able to do, and that's lead, understand, visualize. Okay, center leader leads the recruiting force to accomplish the center's mission. Center leader must identify points of decisive action within the recruiting operations plan and be present at those points to enable mission success. Basically, leaders who personally observe recruiters, prospecting, conducting the Army interview, processing, leading future soldiers, and conducting event support and executing school engagement have the opportunity to evaluate individual recruiter effectiveness and coach, teach, and mentor the force to improve the overall performance of the center. These actions also demonstrate the leader's commitment to each recruiter's development and success as a member of the recruiting team. Okay, so that's kind of important. Center leaders have been recruiters before, hopefully good recruiters. So when you have recruiters that are out there, center leaders have to get involved through all parts of the process. They have to get involved in the prospecting. Center leaders have to get involved in the interviews, in the processing. Okay, you have to be involved in everything. Okay, now the center leaders, basically, when we talk about understand, the recruiting center leader uses operational and mission variables to understand the local recruiting environment. Okay. PMISI, PT, and MET-TC basically are the framework to understand and evaluate the local recruiting environment and to understand the demographic makeup of the area of operation. So those are some considerations that the center recruiter level, basically recruiters go out, gather intelligence, bring it back to the center leader. Center leader takes that information and basically visualizes how the center is going to make its mission. Okay, moving on. Okay, next thing we're going to address is running estimates. Okay, running estimates basically help identify and refine target markets and develop prospecting plans to most effectively penetrate those markets. Center leaders maintain running estimates throughout the recruiting operations process. Running estimates address all aspects of recruiting operations and provide real-time information to the leader. Some examples of running estimates: we have market share data, we have USAREC vacancies, we have school data, and then we also have our recruiting functions analysis. All right, that gives us some live information that helps us get our plans in place. Okay, here we have basically an example of a recruiting functions analysis. Okay, so basically you're going to go through each recruiting function, basically talk about different things that affect your capabilities as it pertains to the function. Okay, commanders at all levels use the recruiting function analysis to identify trends, gaps, and other obstacles that threaten the unit's ability to accomplish the recruiting mission. The RFA provides center leaders with a systematic method to assess the center's performance for each of the 8 recruiting functions. When used effectively, the RFA enables a center leader to identify risk and choke points that degrade the effectiveness of the center and to determine training needs. The center leader uses the RFA to identify individual and organizational training needs and other areas where the leader can focus attention to improve unit performance. Again, you go through each one of the functions basically to identify, hey, talking about intelligence, what kind of threats, what kind of things out there are gonna prevent us or even help us make our mission as it pertains to intelligence. Okay, when prospecting, what are some of our challenges? Okay, so as you do your functions analysis, you go through each one of them and basically jot it down, take you some notes, and then center leaders, that's the intelligence you use to help you in your recruiting operations plan. Okay, so now that we've got past, we've done the functions analysis, we're talking about visualizing here. Next thing we're going to get into is we're going to talk about planning, describe, the ROP development, directing, and then assessing. These are key things that the center leader has to be able to do. Okay, so when we talk about planning, planning is basically the art and science of understanding the situation, envisioning a desired future, and developing effective ways of bringing that future about. At the center level, the center leader conducts planning with the company commander and the recruiters within the center to develop the recruiting operations plan. Then the center leader uses the ROP to establish priorities of effort and allocate resources to accomplish the recruiting mission. Okay, so planning is very important. Got to start off with a good solid plan. Okay, so the next step after you've got a good plan, okay, and you want to start planning, you got to describe it, right? The center leader assembles the team and describes the mission and recruiter's role in accomplishing the mission. This is very important because the recruiters on the ground need to know what the mission is. So you as the leader have to be able to describe it to them so they can actually start to visualize making the mission. And then you get going. So describing facilitates a common shared understanding between the center leader and the recruiters regarding the recruiting operations environment, the mission, and higher command's intent. Applying the principles of mission command, the center leader task organizes the recruiting force and develops the ROP. So good practice that I always did, I always like to get input from my center, from my recruiters. So basically as I was describing it to them, I would get feedback from them on ways that we can improve our center. Okay, so it's a very important step because once you describe it to them, you guys have a shared understanding of what you're going to do. And with their input, now they've bought in, and it makes it easier to lead them because it's not just something that's force-fed. It's part of their ideas too. Next, we have ROP development. So through the ROP, the center leader communicates who, what, when, where, and how to execute the plan. Okay, so this is where we're gonna talk. Hey, recruiter A is doing this, recruiter B is doing that. That's where you formulate your plan and put it all together. Okay, ROP development, the measure of a good plan is not compliance to the plan, but whether the underlying inputs remain valid and the plan enables disciplined initiative, prudent risk-taking, and mission accomplishment. Good plans are simple, agile, and account for the uncertainty while mitigating risk. So some of the things that I've seen out here for center leaders, basically you have to look ahead. You got to plan ahead. You got to jump the route. You got to understand that things are going to happen. You're going to have challenges, so you have to plan for it. Okay, if a recruiter makes an appointment for a certain time, have a backup plan. Okay, so you're waiting to do an appointment in the center. In case that person doesn't come, you will have a prospecting plan. All right, that's just having a contingency plan to make sure that you stay on track. Okay, now assess. The center leader applies information gathered from IPRs, AARs. Oh, let me backtrack. I apologize. I skipped direct. Okay, so after we have the ROP developed, the next step in this process is directing the recruiters. Okay, so you got the plans in place. It's very important that the center leader keeps the recruiters on task. It was easy to get distracted. A lot of things come up all the time. Center leaders have to direct the recruiters to make sure that they're staying on task. Okay, and the center leader directs everything, all aspects. Prospecting, process, future soldiers got to be involved, center leaders. Now, as the recruiters are performing their duties and doing everything, that's where the center leader has to be in there assessing everything as you go. Okay, so the center leader is going to apply information gathered through the daily IPR, weekly AARs, and then you make adjustments to the ROP as you see fit. But those IPRs and those AARs are important times to correct deficiencies. If okay, my prospecting, I was short on prospecting today, quick AAR from today should help me get better tomorrow. Okay, so with effective AARs, we'll be getting better, or we should be getting better. But you have to do the AARs, not just hey, this is what I did today. You got to talk about what was supposed to happen, what was expected, what actually happened, and how can you get better tomorrow. Okay, we're going to move on to the next chapter. Okay, getting into chapter 2. Chapter 2 is leveraging a recruiting environment, or the recruiting information environment. Okay, the recruiting center is the focal point of the recruiting network, which consists of 3 parts. The internal network, which is USAREC, company, battalion headquarters, brigade. You know, these echelons provide administrative, operational, and logistical support to the recruiting center. Okay, so that's us. That's the Army, right? The next one is the external network, right? Social networks, secondary, post-secondary schools, local units. There are primary lead sources for the recruiting center. Okay, so these are assets that you can use. All right, you have to basically foster relationships out there in the community to get them to help with the recruiting efforts. And then there's the information systems. That's the recruiting information system supports information collection, analysis, and sharing across all echelons of the command. Okay. The internal network also includes Recruiting ProNet, which provides virtual collaboration and knowledge resources with the Army's Mill Suite. ProNet provides a forum where recruiting professionals can freely collaborate, build common shared understanding, and exchange recruiting TTPs and lessons learned. Okay, so it's a good tool that you can use. Now there's forums out on Facebook, USAREC forum. There's a leadership forum out there as well. External sources can improve the Army's credibility, provide leads in target markets, and may create additional opportunities in the recruiting market. So those external networks are very important. This is what the recruiting environment looks like, diagram here, okay? In this environment, it's a network-centric operations, focusing primarily on the tactical levels of command. So right in the center, you have recruiting operations. Then around it, of course, you got the internal network, you got the external network branching off, and then you have the information systems that we leverage, okay? Moving on to chapter 3. Chapter 3, we get into the decisive operations, okay? So decisive recruiting operations directly support mission accomplishment, and the center leader must organize and direct the recruiting force to effectively prospect, process, and lead future soldiers. Those are the keys, okay? Talking about prospecting, okay? Prospecting is the foundation of recruiting. The most important thing that we do. I speak with recruiters all the time, and recruiters tell me, well, I couldn't prospect because I had to process. That's great, but if we don't continue to prospect, if we're not prospecting every day, then sooner or later we're not going to have enough people to process. So you got to be able to continue to prospect while we process and while we lead future soldiers. It's continuous. You have to be able to manage your time to where you prospect. Is that important? Okay, so while coaching the recruiters on the most effective prospecting methods and the best time of day to contact each market, center leaders establish specific prospecting objectives for the recruiters in the center, including number of contacts. Okay, the center leader basically should be looking at, okay, this is how many seniors I have in my footprint or in my targeted schools. Okay, I have X number of recruiters. We want to have 100% contact by, let's say, 1 June. Okay, how many new contacts do I have to make to achieve that goal? So I would give each recruiter a number of contacts that they're going to have to make per day. That's going to be their goal. Okay, that's how we achieve that. Okay, then we talk about number of appointments. Okay, each recruiter is going to have a goal of the number of appointments that we're looking at, because that's going to basically tell us the number of appointments that we, by getting the number of appointments that we have made, by the recruiter knowing the number of appointments they need to make, that could line up to our conversion data. So each recruiter, based on their conversion, should know what they need to make, right? And then likewise, they also need to know how many appointments they need to conduct, okay? I know different people use different goals. Some people go 5, 3, and 1 with 5 makes, 3 conducts, 1 test. But really, what you should do is, as center leaders, dig into their actual conversion data, because Sergeant Bryant may not need to make 5 appointments per week to conduct 3, test 1. So you may not be goaling me right. So you got to make sure that you look at each individual recruiter's conversion and go from there. So that's the point I was just making. Center leaders assess conversion data and the skills of the recruiting team and direct prospecting operations that maximize results. The center leader focuses recruiter prospecting toward those areas which are the most productive and uses the center's conversion ratios to determine individual prospecting goals for the recruiting team. The center leader optimizes the 3 prospecting methods based on the recruiting environment and target market. Okay. All right, so next we're going to talk about the prospecting methods. Okay, telephone prospecting. Okay, the center leader determines the percentage of telephone prospecting time devoted to each market and directs the telephone prospecting efforts in specific zip codes, secondary and post-secondary schools, and professional institutions based on the market propensity and past performance. Successful telephone prospecting requires in-depth research and information gathering, blueprint, Okay, so you're going to use future soldiers, social media sites, school yearbooks, local newspapers, influencers, professional organizations. Basically, you use everybody, any resource that's out there, you use it to gather information in order to find out ways to communicate and build relationships with applicants and leads. Center leaders must actively monitor for call reluctance. A lot of recruiters believe that, hey, telephone calls don't work. All I'm getting is parents. I don't feel like doing it, so they blow it off. So center leaders have to stay vigilant and monitor that for call reluctance from the force, and demonstrate how detailed preparation for telephone calls increases its effectiveness. It's all about the planning. So hey, if you're gonna make some phone calls on Monday, you probably need to have a good pre-call plan set on Friday, so when you come in on Monday, you're all ready to go, and you already have the numbers, you already have the leads identified, who you're gonna call, and there's a reason behind it. Not just doing cold calls. You're calling them because, hey, this is the information I gathered on them, or this person scored this on the ASVAB, or their honor roll, something like that. Okay, so it's important to have some blueprint information. Next, we're going to talk about face-to-face prospecting. Okay, face-to-face prospecting is an essential part of every recruiter's plan and requires detailed planning and preparation to execute effectively. This is the method that all recruiters love. They love to say, hey, I'm going to do face-to-face. Okay, but for the most part, a lot of times recruiters aren't doing face-to-face. They're doing area canvas, which is very important. However, with recruiting, with the face-to-face prospecting, you have known targets that you're looking for. So basically, you're taking people that you can't contact through the LRL, or people that you're following up with that kind of wanted to do an appointment but wouldn't commit. You're going out trying to follow up with them to actually get the appointment. Again, it's known information, so you know what you're up against. Area canvas is great too. That's how you get out and meet new people. Okay, so prior to face-to-face prospecting, the center leader ensures that the recruiting force is prepared to conduct an Army interview and is equipped with an adequate supply of recruiting publicity items and business cards to leave behind whether they talk to someone or not. See, a lot of times recruiters leave a center and they just go. They take some things to post, but they're not taking their computer. So you got to always be prepared to conduct an Army interview. All right, at any time. If the targeted lead is unavailable, recruiters should capitalize on the opportunity to meet the lead's influencers, parents, friends, coaches, or coworkers. They can provide a better time to re-engage or supply additional contact and blueprint information, including the lead's cell phone number, email address, hangouts, and interests. So I hear a lot of people say, well, I only reach the parents. Okay, reach out to the parents and gather some information. Speak with the parents. They're the influencers. So, hey, are you Johnny's mom? Okay, I'm Sergeant Bryant. I was just trying to contact Johnny to congratulate him on being a senior and to find out what his plans are after graduation. They'll tell you. Okay, and they'll a lot of times they'll give you his cell phone number. They'll tell you where he's working at. They'll tell you his girlfriend. They'll tell you what sport they play. They tell you everything. Okay, so don't be afraid of parents. All right, that's actually a good thing. If you're getting numbers that are disconnected or no answer, that's a problem. Moving on to virtual prospecting. Virtual prospecting consists of contacting and engaging individuals through email, social media, and the internet. Okay, this is a big craze now with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, that type of thing. Okay, center leaders balance virtual prospecting with other prospecting methods, as other methods may yield a higher contact to contract ratio. So the way I look at it is, telephone prospecting is very efficient. Face-to-face is effective because you go out and you're meeting them face-to-face, so you get to read body language, things like that you can't see over the phone. I always like to use the Facebook prospecting and the social media, that type of stuff. I like to use that to enhance the prospecting that I'm already doing through telephones or face-to-face. Okay, not as my primary source. So if I would say if I'm doing, or in my centers, if I have face-to-face or virtual prospecting being conducted, it's going to be at a minimum. I would say maybe a couple hours a week, 2 to 3 hours a week, not much. Okay, and then once you get into it, a good practice that we used to use is email addresses. We do a lot of those good email campaigns to get the word out. Those are some good techniques, and I'm sure with our digital recruiters out there and some of these computer savvy recruiters we have, there's a lot of other techniques that can be shared throughout the command. Moving on, talking about referrals. Successful recruiters view every person they meet as a potential source of referrals. Recruiters develop relationships with COIs and future soldiers to enhance the recruiting effort and obtain high-value referrals. If asked and encouraged, COIs and future soldiers will pass these referrals to the center for further action. Okay, so I said it earlier, this is about relationships. Recruiting is relationships. You take care of me, I take care of you. So as you meet people in your recruiting operations, recruiter-centered network, as you meet people, you build those relationships, and they'll send people to you. You sit down with them and you tell them, hey, this is what we're looking for. These are the people, these are this is the description of who we're looking for. All right. And if you ask, they will help you. Okay. So don't be afraid to ask. Moving on to interviewing. The Army interview is a centerpiece of all recruiting activities, and its purpose is to engender a commitment to join the Army. All right, bottom line, not just to do some window shopping or to just have a conduct to say that, hey, First Sergeant, I did a conduct today. It's to engender that commitment. The center leader is the recruiting subject matter expert and primary trainer. The center leader is responsible for assessing each recruiter's ability to conduct an effective Army interview and provide feedback for improvement. Recruiters should connect with applicants on a personal level by telling the Army story in a way that is meaningful, understandable, and convincing. So basically, we meet applicants, we meet Johnny. Okay, Johnny comes in, I'm going to personalize myself. Because although I've been in the Army for almost 18 years, but I wasn't born in the Army. I joined the Army just like that applicant that's sitting there with me. Okay, so I sat on the other side of the conversation. So I just would tell my story, all right, in a way that, hey, they're going to understand where I'm coming from, because there's a lot of similarities between the recruiting force and the potential future soldiers that we have. So that's what you got to key in on and understand that, hey, you know, we're here to help these leads out. We're here making a difference. We're here to change their lives, and you have to be personal. Processing. Okay, so now we've prospected for them. We've done the Army interview. We engendered that commitment, and now the next step is to start the processing. Right? Processing begins when an individual makes a commitment and agrees to join the Army. Right? That's when it starts. That's when we roll out that red carpet. Right? The center leader controls the process and provides direction to the recruiting force to efficiently and effectively complete applicant processing activities. Recruiters will verify basic eligibility and conduct screening to reveal known medical conditions, law violations, or other circumstances that may disqualify the individual or require additional documentation. Okay, so this is where we got to be vigilant. We have to make sure that, okay, throughout the process, kid says he wants to process, center leader screens him. Okay, recruiter, I need you to make sure that you verify this basic eligibility stuff, because just like the applicant's time is important, our time as recruiters, our time is important, okay? So we have to make sure that we're doing things the right way the first time. Center leaders ensure recruiters are thorough and accurate during the processing phase to streamline the applicant's experience and reduce opportunities for impropriety or error. So when you know a kid, you know you're trying to put a kid in the Army, okay? So think ahead. As I said before, you gotta jump the route. When I made the appointment, I knew I was gonna ask Johnny to join the Army. So Johnny, when you come to the recruiting center, I need you to bring your driver's license, your birth certificate, your social security card, and your high school diploma so I can verify your identity, right? That way, you know, if they bring it, then hey, you know that's a commitment that Johnny made. If he doesn't, then okay, now that's something you may have to deal with a little bit later, but it's a temperature check, okay? Next, we have leading future soldiers and candidates. Center leaders responsible for the Future Soldier program. All right, Future Soldier training prepares new members for the rigors of IET and life as a soldier. The center leader ensures the program prepares the new enlisted soldiers mentally, physically, and emotionally for the Army service. This preparation includes leadership and counseling, physical fitness training, and formal training via Army distributed learning. Center leaders and recruiters also employ future soldiers to shape the market by accompanying recruiters during area canvassing, face-to-face prospecting, briefings, and COI events. So again, future soldiers, candidates, they're assets for you, okay? They're value added. They can talk to people. They know people you don't know. They can put the word out. So it's important to utilize them. But talking about the counseling, physical fitness training, formal training, sounds like the same type of stuff that we would do with our soldiers, right? Because that's what they are. They're future soldiers, so you treat them as soldiers. We're all NCOs out here. Be NCOs. Teach, train, mentor these young folks who are the future of the Army. Another key part of decisive operations is innovation. All right, center leaders should support and promote innovation at the center level. This helps to optimize recruiting operations in the local market and accomplish the recruiting mission. The center leader must leverage the skills and talents of the recruiting force and develop and share new TTPs to improve center effectiveness. The center leader must inspire the recruiting force to approach all aspects of the operation with critical thinking to improve center efficiency and effectiveness. So center leaders, basically your talent managers, okay? You gotta assess your guys and their strengths and their weaknesses and use your team as you see fit, okay? And that's one of the key things. I didn't mention it earlier, but that's one of the key reasons why we went to 3-31 and got rid of 3-06 because basically we were kind of constricting ourselves with some of the old doctrine with RSTs, ETs, that type of stuff, okay? So now center leaders, you have the flexibility to use your team as you see fit without any labels. Just, hey, do what you got to do, guys, you know. Okay, chapter 4, we're going to talk about shaping operations, okay? Shaping operations create conditions that support decisive operations and include the student recruiting program and COI VIP development. Shaping operations may occur concurrently with decisive recruiting operations and may transition from shaping to decisive during execution. So you can go back and forth with decisive, shaping. Hey, they go back and forth. They're intertwined, okay? Sometimes you have to go out and shape the battlefield. Go to my high school. I'm going there. It's a decisive operation that I have. But hey, when I'm there, I'm going to talk to the counselor. Well, my decisive operation was going in, doing a classroom presentation to get my contacts up. But once I finish, I'm going to do some shaping stuff. I'm gonna go market the SASVAB. I'm going to go talk March to Success. I'm going to go try to set up a presentation with the staff on presenting that and getting the school to utilize March to Success. Okay, talking about the school recruiting program. Okay, the school recruiting program is the cornerstone of successful recruiting operations. Successful recruiting operations are a direct result of the center leader and recruiter's ability to influence high school and college markets. A recruiter's positive influence within a school pays dividends when the students become juniors, seniors, or complete their studies. These shaping operations can positively affect the recruiter's prospecting efforts and enhance mission success of the center. Maintaining an effective school recruit program requires a significant investment of recruiter time and resources, but the effort eventually pays off. So it's a grind. I always said it was basically you plant seeds. You plant seeds and you cultivate it, and over time you'll reap the benefits. Okay, so don't get frustrated when you go out to your school. You do all types of events, and you feel you're just not getting the bang for the buck you think right away. Stay patient, continue to do it. Okay, we're talking about establishing that school recruiting program. Okay, when we get into the establishing that, the center leader identifies and designates a primary and alternate recruiter for the schools in their areas of operation. The center leader determines the number of contacts necessary for each school to support the enlistment goals. The center leader directs recruiters to participate in school events to leverage opportunities. And the center leader also uses the SRP to identify educators and education influencers who have not supported the Army recruiting efforts or do not understand Army life or the depth of Army opportunities. So basically in the school, not only are we looking for enlistments, but we're also trying to build some COIs and build relationships out there in the schools to help us in our recruiting efforts. So always keep that in mind. That's where the shaping operations really come into play, doing events and fostering those relationships in our schools, which is going to lead into COI and VIP development. Successful centers leverage local community leaders who agree to represent the Army as COIs and VIPs to mitigate these challenges. Community leaders and school officials can help team members gain access to difficult schools, serve as guest speakers for local functions, or assist the center by providing high-quality referrals. COI and VIP influence within the local community can open doors and favorably influence the community's perception of the Army. The center leader makes every effort to identify and cultivate COI and VIP to assist the mission, but does not divert excessive resources away from decisive operations. So don't get too caught up in your COIs and your VIPs to where you're getting distracted and the recruiters aren't getting after the mission because you're concerned with your COIs. And if they're not value added, hey, you call it, this is my COI, but they're not giving me referrals, then they're not a COI anymore. Okay, so just make sure that as you cultivate your COIs that you're getting something out of it. All right. Moving on to Chapter 5, Sustaining Operations. Sustaining operations are a vital component of recruiting operations and enable decisive and shaping operations by providing essential support to the recruiting center. Okay, these are some of the areas of support here: logistics, advertising assets, center supplies, public affairs, future soldier functions, personnel management, personnel integration, training and leader development. Okay, this is a shorter chapter. Okay, I'm not going to go through each one of those. I think they speak for themselves on what they provide to help us achieve our mission. So I won't bore you with that. Okay, so that completes Chapter 5. Okay, after Chapter 5, we have Appendix A, which is basically the IPR outline for the center. Okay, and this is one of the most important things that you can do, center leaders, is the IPR. I can tell you guys that as a center leader, I I like to do in-depth IPRs, and my centers, when I was very engaged in my IPRs and did them frequently, my teams had a lot of success. And in the times when my center, when our success would fall off, I'd take a step back and look at it, and it was usually because I had stopped doing the IPRs, because I thought we were so successful. Hey, we got it. The recruiter got it. I'm a back down. I don't have to ask them all these questions. I can step away from it. They're getting it, and then they wouldn't get it, or we wouldn't get it as a team. So I could jump back into my IPR process, and that would usually get us right back on track. So if you're not doing your effective IPRs, shame on you. Start now, draw a line in the sand right now, and start doing IPRs, okay? This outline here basically is the cheat sheet. Tells you what to do, okay? What to address, okay? We talk about personnel, all right? You know, you got to ask those questions about your guys. You know, that's where you talk about awards, NCOERs, that type of thing. You know, sit down with them, and just like we're building relationships with our applicants and future soldiers, the community, you're building a relationship with your team members as well, okay? So you got to ask those questions, all right? So that's the outline, but then we also have here, and I know everybody can't see that, I'll make sure we get those slides out, but when we're talking about it, you go through the personnel, mission posture. All your guys need to know where you sit on mission posture at all times. You know, where you are at accomplishing the mission, when you plan on finishing it up. All right. We talk about processing. All right. We need to know, hey, who's projected, who we got going, who's next in the chute, whose packet's almost complete. All right. And then once if we don't have projections, hey, let's talk about our T&E. Let's talk about our APL. Let's go back. Who's taking the test? Because we're trying to look who we can get to the next step. So if they've taken the test and passed, okay, let's do a follow-up. See if we can get them to the floor. If they're on your processing list, we should be looking at, okay, who have we conducted that hasn't moved to the test line? Okay, and try to move them to the test line. Okay, and then after that, okay, now we're going to talk about our prospecting. Okay, so I always, you know, we look at our processing as our old business. We get into prospecting, we're talking new business. Okay, so I need to know, hey, who are you contacting? Who are you calling? How many attempts you made? Okay, that's the type of stuff that we need to know when we talk about the prospecting. Okay, and then the ROP, we as leaders, you have to make sure that you dig into their recruiting operations plan to identify training needs and make sure that they're prospecting in the right markets. If they're not, then you as a leader have to be there to give them guidance to make adjustments. All right, and then we have future soldiers. Okay, future soldiers. It's very important that we maintain our future soldiers, so we have to have a sound future soldier training program, making sure that, hey, we're identifying any issues as early as we can and addressing them. Okay, no sense in holding them. Okay, and we have USAREC Reg 601-95 to kind of guide us through that. Okay, so just make sure that you're paying special attention to those future soldiers that are amber, you know, depth in, close on weight, or other issues like that. Okay, that should be a weekly thing. Height and weight, you know, annotated, and you know, just good practice to take care of our soldiers. So that's the IPR process, and that is basically going to conclude USAREC Manual 3-31, kind of an overview of it. You guys should pick it up, read it. Anytime I read one of these regulations or manuals, I always see something new. So just get in the habit, spend some time on your self-development. It won't hurt. It's only going to help you get better. All right, so this concludes my class for the Seattle Recruiting Battalion School of Excellence. I hope I didn't bore you too much, but good luck out there. Army strong.